Carol Burnett, the queen of television comedy, the heart and soul of The Carol Burnett Show, was known for her warmth, charm, and contagious laughter. For decades, she made America smile, proving that kindness and humor could coexist even in the cutthroat world of Hollywood. But behind the laughter, behind the curtain calls and standing ovations, there was one man she could never forgive, one man she reportedly truly hated more than anyone. To her fans, Burnett seemed incapable of anger. She was generous, patient, and adored by her cast and crew. But even she had limits. The story of the man she despised has circulated quietly among Hollywood insiders for years. A tale of betrayal, disrespect, and wounds that never healed. This wasn't a petty feud over fame or attention. It was personal. It cut deep into Burnett's sense of loyalty and professionalism. The man in question was someone she once trusted, a performer who shared the stage with her, who made audiences roar with laughter. But off-screen, his behavior crossed lines that Burnett simply couldn't ignore. When she finally broke her silence, her words shocked even her closest colleagues. "You can be funny," she once said. "But if you're cruel, that's not comedy, that's weakness." What happened between Carol? Burnett and this man changed the way she worked. Forever. And it revealed a darker side of television's golden age that few ever saw. This is the story of friendship turned sour, of laughter turned to anger, and the man Carol Burnett truly hated more than anyone. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, The Carol Burnett Show reigned supreme on American television. Every Saturday night, families gathered around their sets to watch Carol Burnett, Harvey Korman, Vicki Lawrence, and Tim Conway create comedy magic that would define an entire generation. The chemistry between the cast members seemed effortless, pure laughter, pure joy. But behind that polished curtain, not everything was as it seemed. At the start, Carol Burnett and Harvey Korman shared a genuine friendship. He was witty, sophisticated, and sharp-tongued, the perfect comedic counterpart to her warmth and spontaneity. Together, they crafted some of television's most beloved sketches, from the hilarious Gone with the Wind parody to the bumbling dentist routine. The audience saw a perfect team, two masters of timing who seemed to bring out the best in each other. But Burnett, always the consummate professional, valued respect above all else. She treated her crew and co-stars as equals, always ensuring everyone felt appreciated. Harvey Korman, however, had a different temperament. Off-camera, he could be moody, dismissive, and, at times, cruel. His sarcasm, which seemed funny on screen, often crossed the line when the cameras stopped rolling. At first, Carol brushed it off, believing his arrogance was just part of his complex personality. But as the seasons went on, the tension grew. Korman's behavior began affecting others on the set. He'd storm off during rehearsals, insult writers, and occasionally refuse direction. For Burnett, who led the show with kindness and patience, this was unacceptable. One day, his attitude went too far. Korman reportedly lashed out at a fellow cast member, mocking their performance in front of the crew. That was the breaking point. Carol pulled him aside, not as a boss but as a friend, and told him flatly, "Harvey, you're a brilliant performer, but if you can't be kind, you don't belong here." Those words shocked him. It was the first time anyone had ever stood up to him so directly. But Carol meant every word. To her, comedy came from connection, not cruelty, and watching someone she once trusted turn toxic was deeply painful. That moment marked the beginning of a rift that would never fully heal. What had started as creative tension was now something personal, and the warmth between them was slowly turning cold. By the mid-1970s, The Carol Burnett Show was a cultural phenomenon. The sketches were sharper than ever, the audience bigger, and the laughter louder. But behind the cameras, the tension between Carol Burnett and Harvey Korman had reached its boiling point. What had once been a warm professional friendship had turned into a silent, simmering conflict that everyone on set could feel. Harvey Korman's brilliance was undeniable. He could turn even the simplest line into a comedic masterpiece. But with success came ego. His temper became shorter, his criticism harsher, and his arrogance almost unbearable. Writers and crew members began dreading his mood swings. Carol, who had always led with grace and humor, found herself walking on eggshells around a man she once admired deeply. The final straw came during a live taping. The cast was performing a sketch that wasn't landing well. Instead of laughing it off, Corman turned visibly irritated, breaking character and muttering an insult about the material, loud enough for the crew and audience to hear. Carol froze, humiliated and furious. The moment the cameras stopped, she confronted him in front of the cast. "Harvey," she said firmly, "if you ever act like that again, you're gone." The room went silent. Everyone knew Carol Burnett as one of the kindest people in Hollywood, but that night, they saw her strength. Harvey tried to brush it off as a joke, but Carol didn't smile. She'd had enough. For her, it wasn't about ego or power. It was about respect. Something she demanded not just for herself, but for everyone who made the show possible. After the confrontation, Harvey left the studio early, and the two didn't speak for days. The crew noticed the tension immediately. Rehearsals grew colder. The easy laughter between takes disappeared. Carol's patience, once endless, had been spent. Eventually, Harvey came back to work as usual, but something had changed. The chemistry between them, though still professional on screen, lacked the warmth it once had. Carol had drawn a line, and though he never admitted it, Corman knew he had crossed it. Ironically, those difficult years would also produce some of the show's funniest moments. Their comedic timing remained flawless, but beneath the laughter was the shadow of something broken: trust. Years later, Carol would look back on that time and say, "I loved Harvey, but he could be a real pill." It was her polite way of admitting what everyone already knew, that behind her legendary kindness was a woman who knew when to stand her ground. By the late 1970s, the golden age of the Carol Burnett show was slowly coming to an end. Ratings were still strong, but the atmosphere behind the scenes had changed. What once felt like a joyful family of performers now felt like a workplace under quiet tension. And at the center of it all were Carol Burnett and Harvey Korman. Though their on-screen chemistry remained unmatched, the emotional distance between them had grown impossible to ignore. The two could deliver a sketch flawlessly, then walk off stage without saying a word to each other. Carol's heart ached over it. She had always believed that laughter came from love and connection, and she could feel that connection slipping away. Eventually, Corman announced that he was leaving the show. Officially, it was to pursue new projects and focus on his own career. But those close to the production knew the truth. The relationship between him and Carol had become too strained to continue. Carol didn't try to stop him. Though she respected his talent, she also knew the show couldn't thrive in an environment poisoned by resentment. When his final episode aired, the mood on set was bittersweet. The audience cheered, the cast hugged, and Carol even smiled through it all, ever the professional. But behind that smile was real pain. She had spent years building something special, only to see one of her closest collaborators walk away under a cloud of tension. After the taping, Carol approached Harvey privately. There were no cameras, no audience, just two people who had once shared something great. She simply said, "You made millions of people laugh, Harvey. Don't forget that." Then she turned and walked away. For years afterward, Carol rarely spoke publicly about him. When she did, her tone was measured but honest. "Harvey was complicated," she told one interviewer. "He could make you laugh until you cried, or just make you cry." Harvey, too, would later reflect on his time with Carol. In his own words, "She demanded the best, and she was right to. I didn't always make that easy." It was a rare moment of humility from a man known for his pride. Their goodbye marked the end of an era, not just for the show, but for television comedy itself. The Carol Burnett show had been a symbol of warmth, laughter, and family. Losing Corman wasn't just losing a co-star. It was losing a piece of that magic. Yet for Carol, it was also a lesson, one that would follow her for the rest of her life, that even the brightest laughter can cast a shadow, and sometimes standing your ground means letting go. Time has a remarkable way of softening even the deepest wounds. For years after the Carol Burnett show ended, Carol and Harvey Korman went their separate ways. Each pursued new projects, yet both remained forever tied to the show that had made television history. Still, the silence between them lingered, an unspoken acknowledgement of the tension that had once torn through their partnership. In interviews throughout the 1980s and 90s, Carol was always gracious when Harvey's name came up. She praised his genius, his impeccable timing, and his ability to turn a single line into a moment of brilliance. But she never hid the truth either. He could be difficult, she said once with a gentle smile. But we were family, and family fights sometimes. Harvey's career after leaving the show was steady, but never reached the same heights. Though he appeared in Mel Brooks' classics like Blazing Saddles and History of the World, Part 1, the camaraderie and creative spark he'd shared with Carol were gone. In later years, he admitted to friends that leaving the Carol Burnett show had been one of his biggest regrets. Then, in 2001, fate offered them one last chance at closure. The two reunited for a special television tribute honoring the Carol Burnett show. When Harvey walked onto the stage, the audience erupted in applause. But all eyes were on Carol. For a brief moment there was hesitation. Then she smiled, extended her arms, and hugged him tightly. It was a powerful moment, one that transcended years of silence and pride. Carol later said in an interview, "I realized that holding on to anger doesn't do any good. Harvey was part of something beautiful in my life. I didn't want to remember the bad, only the laughter." In his final years, Harvey spoke fondly of Carol, acknowledging her as the glue that held us all together. When he passed away in 2008, Carol paid tribute with a simple, heartfelt message. "Harvey made all of us better. I loved him, even when it was hard." That single line summed up everything about Carol Burnett's strength. She wasn't someone who carried grudges. She carried gratitude. Despite the pain, she chose forgiveness, because she knew that the legacy of laughter they created mattered more than any past resentment. In the end, the story of Carol Burnett and Harvey Korman wasn't one of hatred. It was one of humanity. Two artists, brilliant and flawed, who built something extraordinary together, stumbled through pride and misunderstanding, and finally found peace in mutual respect. Their journey reminds us that even the greatest performers are still human, capable of anger, forgiveness, and most of all, love. And in that, Carol Burnett proved once again why she remains one of Hollywood's most beloved icons, not just for her laughter, but for her heart.